I would like to start this speech with a little bit of action. Can everybody please put your hands on your head like this? And let's take a moment to think of what's in there. The big B. I can see from the smiles you're thinking of Amitabh Bachchan. We're not here to talk about Bollywood. What I meant was our brain. As children, our brains are so free. They roam the world, explore, ask questions. But as we grow up, our brains start to get confined by limitations, by boundaries, and a heavy cage settles over it. A cage not made of iron, but something far stronger. Social expectations. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bhupesh Kumar Singh, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that isn't talked about as much. Questions. I have two brothers. One is very young, he's 3, and the other one is in 2nd grade. And one time he came up to me and he asked me, Bhaiya, what's adrenaline? I didn't know how to explain it to a 7-year-old. I told him it's something that makes you very strong. And he said, well then, how do I get it? Honestly, I couldn't say anything. And similarly, now I want to ask you all, when's the last time you asked somebody a question that made them slightly uncomfortable? Not rude, just curious. Why is this? Is this really the best path? Have we explored all the possibilities? Questions. Questions are what built humanity. In fact, at some point in history, some human would have seen a lion and he's like, that lion has claws. That crocodile has teeth. Why don't I just rub these two rocks and boom, civilization? Obviously, it isn't that simple, but for the sake of this presentation. And now you might think that I'm saying this for motivation's sake. Yes, some motivational speaker going, get stronger. You can do it. 50 push-ups. No, friends. This is science. In fact, science is based on questions. Back in the 17th century, everybody knew if you drop something, it falls. Now that's not very insightful. But then Sir Isaac Newton came along and he asked the question, why does it fall down? Why doesn't it go sideways? Why doesn't it go up or drift into space? And with that question, he discovered the theory of gravity. That is the power of questions. That is the power of science. But you know what? Here's the tragedy. These very questions are being silenced, suppressed, discouraged. I'm fortunate enough to be from a school that encourages these questions. But 90% of the educational institutions out there don't. These so-called temples of learning are turning into factories. Factories that produce silent workers. Workers who memorize but don't understand. In fact, I've been through this personally. A couple of years back, I bombed my midterms. Terrible marks. I felt down. And when UTs came around, I found this very convenient loophole. In fact, there was this piece of advice that was circulating through the students. Bro, don't ask questions, just memorize. Just memorize, man. Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. So I did what every teenager did. I didn't pay attention in class. I didn't study at all. In fact, I didn't even touch the textbook. I just memorized everything a week before my exam. And you know what? It worked. I got great marks. But when finals came around, blank. The problem with the finals was it was a vast syllabus. And by not paying attention, by not understanding the topics, I was not able to understand the question paper. And I had my answer sheet and pen in hand. That's when I realized how important questions are. And questions are being suppressed by this societal norm, this societal expectations that tell us that you're supposed to score great, but they don't tell us that you're also supposed to understand the concept. And I know that a lot of you have this little voice in your heads that goes, well, we are just one person, Bhupesh. How can we change the societal norm? How do you expect us to go against the entire society? You can tell that voice that a single match can light a forest fire. One match, that's all it takes. Back in the day, people believed that the earth was the center of the universe. They believed that every other celestial body orbited earth in these 6 angelic pockets. But then this very smart man, Galileo Galilei, came along and he was observing the moons of Saturn. And he said, well, if everything orbits Earth, why are these moons orbiting Saturn? And he was looking at the parts of the celestial bodies and he figured out that Earth was not in fact the center of the universe. In fact, Earth orbited the sun. Well, at that point, they called him a crazy maniac. Yeah? But 5 people believed him. And then 5 more. And today, if somebody tells us that the earth is the center of the universe, we would laugh at him. That is the power of one question. That is the power of one person. So how do we break free? We start with ourselves. In maths, don't just accept the formula. Question, where's the proof? Who made this? What was the flaw with the previous formula? Why is this in syllabus? In science, don't accept the theory. Ask who challenged it, who created it, and how many marks this is for. Humans are born with this never-ending urge to know everything. In fact, scientists call humans morbidly curious, which is a fancy way to say we are so curious that scientists think there's something wrong with our brain. Like, it's not so different from some other brain. So why be this curious? I mean, you don't see a bear going, well, what's that big fireball in the sky? You guys call it the sun? Oh, cool. I'm going to send a metallic object up there. No, you don't. But humans do. So use this curiosity. Don't suppress it. Ask questions with intent and with purpose. And I would like to conclude my speech by saying that the next time somebody tells you, don't ask questions, just memorize. Look them in the eye and tell them, no, because I am not a machine. I am a human being with a free mind that is wired to wonder. Thank you.